Hello, this is John Thompson, and I'm a library system director in Wisconsin as well as a building consultant. And today we're going to share a little bit of a handbook that I've written. It's called "What the Bleep Am I Getting Myself Into?" Library Building and Space Planning Overview. And this guidebook is designed to help libraries of all sizes, but particularly smaller libraries to um, give a sense of what a building project would entail. And just to give you a kind of an overview, it's not going to be something that's going to be totally in depth, but it's something that can get you started with a process and then kind of work you through step by step. So um, really what this is intended to do is really to get your feet wet and and really focus some of your thinking on what kind of the things I need to do next, especially when you're feeling frustrated with your space. You want to be able to offer this new program or this new type of material, but you just don't have space for it. And, is it something that we need an entire building project for, or is it something that we can maybe do some creative rearranging? So we're going to kind of walk through all of this today and give you a brief overview of what you can find in this guidebook. So this is kind of a little bit of an overview of the table of contents. As you can see, it is kind of from the beginning of that dream stage all the way towards the end of getting the building completed and having that celebration for the end of your space. And then this guidebook is also designed to provide a host of resources for you so that you don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel for all of the different things that you may want within your project. As a library community, we share a lot of information with each other, and this is kind of just putting this all together. And a lot of this is based on my experience helping libraries in Wisconsin with building projects. And in some cases, it might be a simple redesign, rearranging some of the shelving, to a full-blown hire an architect all the way to building completion. So this is kind of based on my experiences, and hopefully it will be helpful to you moving forward. So again, this is kind of the big picture steps of what we're going to look at. So, you know what what do we want in our space? What do we have right now? Um, the other part of this is, kind of looking at yourself and saying, okay, I can't do this alone. How can I help myself get through this project? Because it may take, you know, 2 years, 3 years, and in some cases that projects have taken a decade or two. So, it's all something that you need to make sure that you don't burn yourself out with. And then kind of really um, once I've got a vision of kind of what I want to do. Where are we going to put this? How are we going to tell the architect what we want in our project? How do we find the right architect? How are we going to pay for this? These are all some of the things that we're going to touch upon today. Um, we're all hoping that we're going to go through this project and there's not going to be any hiccups. We want to have a you know from A to Z without any hiccups. But really, you should prepare yourself for something that's going to look a little bit like this, because all the time there's going to be, well, what if we did this, or maybe we could do this, or how about this building here, or how about this site over here? A lot of that's going to occur during your project, and so you want to be prepared for it and really feel comfortable knowing that you're making the best decision that you can for your community and for your library. So really the basic step for any building project or any redesign or any remodel is really looking at your building in terms of your strategic plan, your service priorities. Where are you now? What would you like to be doing? How has the community changed since you built your library? How are the building or your spaces limiting what you can do? What is the condition of your building? So, if you answer a lot of these questions and say, yeah, we want to be able to offer a meeting room that we don't have space for. Okay, that might be a longer term project, but if we want to just add um, some different type of material. Maybe we want to add some snowshoes, or we want to add that library of things collection. Can we weed the collection enough that we can carve out a couple of sections of shelving for our library of things? Those are some of the decisions we have to make. And but if your building's falling around down around you, in terms of, the roof needs repair, the HVAC system is getting out of date, you're probably looking at a longer term project, even though you probably could rearrange your space and make it do. You still have some bigger issues to consider. And then, really looking at your community and saying, okay, where is our community going? What is our vision of our community? How has it changed since we put our library together? All of those things have an impact on how we utilize our space within the library. And then um, I always advocate having a tour guide, um, per se, of library buildings that you want to take a look at. So maybe you want to look at maker spaces. So what are some ideal libraries that have maker spaces? They may be twice, four times bigger than your community, but you're really focusing on what types of things are, or what elements are in those spaces. So the size of the community doesn't really matter. And the same way with a brand new building, there are things that you can scale down or up depending on the building that you're looking at, that will make your library project successful. So, you go to a library and look around and say, oh, I really love this piece of furniture, or I really love the colors here, or I love how they mixed and matched flooring in here to make this space a multi-purpose space. So those are things that you can learn regardless of the size of the building. So when you're looking at a building, whether it's your own building or when you're going out on those tours, it helps to have some sort of guide to have you start thinking about some of the questions that you want to answer. So, okay, let's say I'm looking at my own building parking. Yeah, we've only got off-street parking, that's got um, 10 stalls in it. Our big programs, we usually have 50 people here, so they end up having to park on the street. And we happen to be downtown. We can't get all of those folks on the main street, so then they're parking on side streets. um, there's, during time, there's, maybe there's a funeral home downtown, and during a funeral the whole street's blocked up with funeral traffic, so parking is not ideal. What does our signage look like? How visible are we? Um, can somebody find it without signage? Is it on a visible location? Um, is our building accessible? Do we have enough spaces for patrons? Do we have enough chairs? Do we have quiet study spaces? Do we have places for them to use their technology? Those are the types of things that you're looking at. And within the handbook, the form that's in Appendix A actually allows you to fill it in and type your comments in there. So if you wanted to do that kind of interactively, you could do that. This is also the helpful when you're going to look at other libraries. So, you look at that library and say, oh yeah, I just love the way that light fixture looked, the the colors, the style. So you want to make a note of that. So this is a good place to do that when you're touring other libraries. So this is a multi-purpose form in the sense of what that looks like. Um, then really thinking about what your library is trying to do, whether it's a short-term situation or long-term. So short-term might be more collection space. Long-term would be, replacing the roof, expanding the children's area, creating a teen area. Um, those are the kinds of things that you'll want to think that are a little bit more long-term for your project. So then, what are the positives of the facility? Is it on a highly visible corner lot? Is there room to expand that space? Does it have ample parking? It's still an attractive building. People have fond memories of it. Um, and then on the flip side, what are some of the concerns? If the roof is leaking, the parking lot needs to be replaced. We're in a tucked away in, 5 blocks off of Main Street. Nobody knows where the library is. Then looking at all of those pieces up above, then you can kind of look at what are some of the short-term things that we can do. Again, weed the collection, maybe paint some spaces and give it a little pop of color in the library. Long term, we need to do an HVAC replacement, roof replacement, and we need to do an addition to add that children's area or program room. This gives you kind of that summary of what you need to do. And then once you have that kind of in place, it'll give you a better sense of what's going on. So this is an example of a library. If you notice, it's on a main street. The door that entrance into the library actually opens into the library. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can go to that library space, and you might be able to jiggle yourself around enough to get the door closed. Most likely not. If you notice, there's steps going downstairs. There's also steps going upstairs. So in essence, the only really truly accessible space in this library for somebody in a wheelchair is that front entranceway. There's a picture of some of the water damage that's in the lower level on a stairwell. Kind of looking at the shelving, there are some dark spots in there, so the lighting is not as adequate as it could be. Shelving looks okay in the sense that it's not over capacity, or completely falling apart. There's the table, which is really the only table in the library for people to do work at. It's a pretty good sized table, and it pretty much takes up that whole space, and really is not accessible around the backside because of the shelving behind it. Also, when you walk around this particular building, there's a squishy spot in the floor. So that's something that you would kind of note in some of those negative pieces of the structure. So then you've kind of got all of those service ideas down and really where you want to go. Now you kind of want to give yourself a rough estimate of how much square footage you're going to need. So Wisconsin has a tool called Public Library Space Needs, a planning outline that was created by Anders Dahlgren, who used to be with the Department of Public Instruction. This particular Excel spreadsheet was last updated in 2009, so it's going to give you some very broad parameters, but it doesn't necessarily equate to lower shelves, wider aisles, and study spaces that we find in today's more modern library, but it will give you a rough idea of what you might need for square footage. Connecticut has a similar tool. It's a little bit more up to date, but again, the underpinnings of this was actually created from Anders Dahlgren's tool from Wisconsin. So again, it's not necessarily the most up-to-date tool, but again, it is another resource for you to use. So you can use both of them and see which one you feel works better. But it will give you a rough idea. So, if the planning tool says you need 8,000 square feet and you only have 2,000 square feet, you pretty much can tell that you need some additional space for your library. And this is happens to be what the printout looks like from the Wisconsin tool. Again, it's pretty broad. It'll give you overall collections, square footage needs, your seating capacity, your staff workspaces, and then kind of those programming spaces. And then the special use calculation there is for all the other things that aren't really captured in that space planning tool. So it could be like your photocopier. It could have been a coffee nook. It could be those study spaces. Back in the day, it also included Alice stands and things like that. So when it was written in 2009, it included some things that we really don't have in libraries anymore. The non-assignable space are spaces that you need to have in their aisle spaces, just space to move around and things that you really can't put other things into. Um, might be your mechanical area. So it just gives you a rough idea of where you need to be for your square footage. So this between the written narrative stuff and these numbers, you'll have a pretty good sense of where you need to go with your library project. Um, so again, this is the same spreadsheet that we talked about earlier about creating that vision. So, you know, we used it to assess our own building. Now we're looking at it for going out and finding what we like in those other spaces. So, really go take a look at, different libraries. The particular one here is Colby. It's got a metal roof. It's a standalone library. It's got a lot of green space. You wander in and it's got a space for the kids to kind of escape and read some stories. But it also has collection space in there so they can pull picture books off or other things. So it gives you a sense of what the library is all about. Um, this one particular library has a lot of woodwork in there. So if you like the richness of the wood, you'll have an example if you were to go to that library. Here's a few more interior shots. They have a kind of a multi-purpose makerspace, activity room, and then the other picture is going into the library, so you can kind of see the circulation desk is made out of wood. There's the wood columns that are basically wood wrapped columns. Um, Solid wood furniture, really keeping that wood warmth within that community. Then we go look at Somerset. This happens to be in addition to an existing building. The new entrance basically is created to allow for future expansion, so that wall could easily come out. The rest of the building is wrapped in brick so that you can match the old style of the building, but they are in a community that has seen rapid growth over the last 10 years, and they anticipate it happening um, into the future. So this one has a little bit less wood in it. The floors are actually a concrete floor. There's a fireplace. There's a pop of color in that wall and the sconce there for the teen area. So this is, a space designed for the kids. The walls are pretty much white, but there are, again, another pop of color. The purple there happens to be a tackable wall surface that they can hang artwork and other things on there. Lots of windows, natural light. And then there's also some decorative lighting in there, hanging from the ceiling that gives it a little bit different look and feel. And then Wanakee, again, a new building, much larger than the other two examples, multi-story. The community space is kind of tucked off in an L off of the main building. It allows for use of that space after library hours. They've created a variety of reading nooks in there around either a fireplace or other features within the building. Each area kind of has its uniqueness to it. Again, highlighted with some of the light fixtures. There's some wall art on there that, again, that also works as a book display. Different types of shelving, much lower shelving than you would typically find in a traditional library that might have been built 20, 30 years ago. Again, some different styles. These are all have different elements in there that you may want to pick and choose to have within your own library space. So once you've kind of put that vision together in your head on some notes in paper, other ideas, you really want to turn that into uh, a building program statement so that you can convey your ideal library to the architect. So this is taking that vision and really building it into a written document. This is something that you can, do yourself. You can hire a building consultant to help you write that. Um, Generally, it's not recommended that the architect write it for you because they're looking at it from their lens, and this is really your vision. Now, having said that, this vision may not be possible within the size of the building or your budget, but it at least gives you a starting point to work with the architect. And this is an example of kind of a page from that. So we're looking at the director's office. You know, how big is it? What do we want to have for functions within that? What are some of the special things that we would like that to have? So, you know, in this case, we want to have windows that we can see out to the circulation desk work area. So, you know, if we need to jump up and go help at the circ desk in a smaller library, we can see that without having somebody to come knock on our door and kind of disturb their flow. You know, then what kind of furniture do we want in there? How do we want it to look and feel? Um, Remember that you're writing this for today and into tomorrow. So you may not be the director moving, you know, forward in 10 years. Um, so you want to make sure it's flexible enough for the next person to be the director, but you know, they'll give you a basis to start with. Um, Once you have that done, then you kind of have to figure out, okay, where are we going to put this? Now, this may be something that you can do on your own, or this might be something that you'll want to work with your architect to do. So, um, some cases you may already have a site. So the city may have said, okay, you've got this 2 acre lot, we already own it, and this is where we're going to put the library. In other cases, you're going to have to decide, you know, can it work on our current site or can it work, you know, somewhere else? So we want to really look at all of these considerations to figure out what's going to work best. This really should be done in a somewhat discreet way so that um, you're not publicly identifying the targets of your possible land acquisition, because if you do that, the people that own those properties may just increase the value knowing that you want it. So you want to be transparent, but you also need to make sure that you're careful not to lose your competitive edge when you're trying to acquire property. So a lot of things will happen with a site. So you may have an ideal site in mind and everything looks great except for there's you know, fiber optic cable running through the middle of the property, or there's no water and sewer, or there's an inadequate road going to that location. Those are extra costs that you have to consider for this project. So your project cost could include running you know, water and stormwater utilities to that site. So you have to be aware of that when you're looking at the sites. So again, that's a kind of that scale to figure out what's going to work or not work. You know, I had mentioned working with an architect. So this is probably the most crucial thing you can do for your project. Um, you need to create a request for qualifications to send out to hire an architect. In Wisconsin, we don't have to go low bid for professional services, so you can hire the architect that's going to work best for you and your community. So you want to really avoid those flashy presentations, really focus on the firm and the work that they've done, not just on the flash of the presentation. You are going to be working with this architect for a number of years. It could be 2, could be 3, could be 4, could be longer. You want to make sure that you're okay working with this architect. So if during the interview you get this very bad vibe with an architect and it's like, I don't know if I can work with this, but they, they seem like they're okay. You know, if you're really having those bad vibes when you're during the kind of the dating phase of hiring an architect, because this is their best foot forward, um, you may want to think twice about that. Some architectural firms will have engineers on staff. Others will have hired sub-consultants, so they will bring in folks to do their structural work or do their HVAC engineering work. That's okay, but make sure you know the qualifications of those consultants. That's the big picture that you're working with. Um, you really want to look at designs that allow for function and flexibility. Some architects, you know, like to design based on their visions of libraries, the ability to win design awards. You really want somebody that understands libraries and how they function, that also allow for flexibility during the future use of the building. You want to look at who is going to be your project architect, not the person that's necessarily the head of the architectural firm or the person doing the sales promotion, but the person you're going to be working with on a day-to-day basis. So look at their expertise. A firm could have done 30 different library projects, but the architect working with you may have done none of them. So you're really wanting to focus on the person doing the work and who's going to be communicating with you all the time. Again, we had mentioned that RFQ, the request for qualifications. When you're looking at it, search out architects that have done library projects, but you may have to, for political reasons, think about, there's this architect who's been in business for 30 years in our community and is well respected. They may not have done a library, but you owe it to them politically to at least request their qualifications. So maybe write something into the qualifications that, hiring local or regional subcontractors or architects would add extra points to their qualification, their package. So you might want to find a way to do that. So that's something to think about. You don't have to do it, but in some cases you might, just to make sure that you are appeasing what might be the political winds of your community. This kind of gives you a little bit of a summary of those qualifications are, and if you want print copies, we want 8 print copies for the committee, or we just want an electronic copy that we'll send out to folks. So that's up to you how you want it received. You can get both, but again, they're going to be doing this at no cost. So don't say we want 50 copies of this. Really focus on the folks within your committee. If that's who you want to have print copies, then you can get the electronic copy to send to other folks that may want it. Again, this sample is in one of the appendixes for you to kind of build on if you want to use that. And so here's some examples of what some of the documents will look like if you did get print ones. They're could be bound or stapled. It really doesn't matter. They all have different things. These were all in response to the same request. Each came in a slightly different. Once you have that architect, they're going to work with you to kind of figure out what spaces you want next to each other. So we'd like the children's area next to the circulation desk. We'd like the adult area next to the computers, the young adult next to the meeting room, but close enough to the circulation desk that we can see them. They'll give you that kind of layout concept, and then once you're okay with that, they'll use that to kind of refine where some of the interior layouts are. Again, it's going to be a rough sketch to begin with. Again, you continue to refine that. Once you get that refined a little bit more, they'll get some preliminary sketches of the interior exterior, and then you'll sign off on those. Those will be good enough for you to go out and raise money or sell that project. If you're hoping to get municipal funding completely, it gives them an idea of what that is. Those drawings will change as the project moves forward, but the basic concepts will stay the same. So this kind of gives you a sense of what one of those bubble diagrams looks like in a space that is a conversion of an old bank building into a library. So they kind of fit some of the spaces around existing rooms and other structures that couldn't be changed in that space. So this gives you an idea of kind of how everything flows out. Once it was signed off on, they threw in some tables and chairs and shelving to give you a better sense of what this would look like. Um, Having said that, when this project was completed, much of the designs that are here are in different spaces because they tweaked things around a teeny bit to make it flow a little bit. And in this particular case, staff changed from the beginning concepts to final construction, so they had some new ideas. Um, Once you're kind of set with the building, you then have to figure out how you're going to furnish the building. And this is one of those things, again, you can kind of look at, what are your existing shelving and seating looking like? Are they okay? Or are they really tired, worn out, wrong colors, just don't work? Um, when you're looking at furnishing a library, be prepared to spend money. Library furniture um, is high quality. It needs to be durable. It needs to stand up to heavy use from the community, people of all sizes, um, all different types of uses. So a teenager may flop their legs over a chair. They may want to move the chair around. You know, Seniors may want to move them around to create more of a conversation space. So all of those kinds of things you need to kind of think about. When you're looking at furniture. The architect or designer with a firm may be able to help you with that, but if you're in a tight budget, you may not have an interior designer or somebody that's going to be able to spec out your furniture for you. So this is where you're going to need a little bit of expertise. There's a lot of choices out there. Um, Kind of narrow it down to what you think might work. Some of the vendors will help you, um, but if you need to get more than one bid, it's difficult to work with one vendor, have them do all the work, and then send it out to bid. That's not really a fair way of doing it. And you also want to make sure you're comparing similar or identical items from vendor to vendor, because the quality and the types of materials you use can greatly impact the cost for your project. Um, so, again, um, looking at, different features within the library, in this particular case, the circulation desk, the colors, just to give you an idea of what some things might look like. Um, there's a whole host of fabric colors, styles to choose from. You can look at a Demco catalog and look at a chair. It might have 3 choices of fabric. If you were to go to the manufacturer's catalog, you would notice that they might have 40 different types of fabric and different qualities of fabric that you can put on that very same chair. Again, looking at how what the colors you want to do and what the function of the room. So, in a meeting room, you want to, maybe have tables and chairs that can move easily, that you can rearrange, uh, flip up and tuck away. So that if you don't want to use them for, in a story time, you have the space there. Think about what you're using for your teens and others. What can color do for a library? So, you know, in one case, you can get wood shelving, gives you a richness of the wood. The other has metal shelving with a relatively neutral color. The color is added to the end caps of the shelving. So that can either be a wood end cap, it can be metal end cap, it can be a laminate end cap. There's a whole host of colors and options that you have. So don't limit yourself in your thinking. And in this case, this particular library added color with the light fixtures and the fabric that surround the light fixtures. Um, a couple of different examples again of the end caps, some wood, laminate color. So there's a um, brightness and boldness to the one set there that happens to be in the children's area where they were okay having a bit more pop of color. Again, more of a neutral wood on the top and a neutral color on your shelving. and again, these are some examples of the different types of fabric colors and textures that you can get, whether it's a woven fabric like a cloth or a non-woven or like a vinyl. You can get colors and options in all of those to fit what you feel is best for your library. Laminate colors, again, there are hundreds and hundreds of choices of colors. One green from one company may be different than another green. There may be textures, lines, grains, all kinds of different things to think about when you're putting your library together. So again, how you meld those colors together will make a difference in how your library looks. So, if your library is just feeling worn out and um, you want to refresh it, it might just be carpet and some paint on the wall. Just, pick an accent color, maybe change up the light fixture and have an accent light fixture here. So, we're again looking at some grays as a neutral and adding the pop of color in specific spaces where most of the building is white walls and white ceilings. Um, now, of course, we come to the biggest challenge of projects is how are we going to pay for it? And this is again where you're not going to be doing this project alone. You need to have some champions for your project. And, especially when you're doing fundraising, you'll want to have a committee to work with you to build a campaign. Now, you can hire a fundraising consultant to help with that, provide a feasibility study to see, okay, yes, our community can support this size of project through fundraising. Those studies cost money, and then their help in supporting your campaign also costs money. So, depending on the size of your campaign, um, you'll have to raise additional dollars. On the low end, it may be $150,000. On the high end, it could be, you know, 2 or 3 times that, depending on what they're going to do to help you and the size of your campaign. They are not A fundraising consultant's not necessarily going to be doing the work for you. Um, that's going to be part of your campaign committee and the people that are part of that group going out and asking for donations. But they can help build that structure for you if you need help with that. Um, so one of the things that you'll want to do is early on in the process is create a naming rights policy. So that's something that your library board should approve, saying, okay, yes, we're willing to name the library for a donor if they give us 3/4 of the project cost, or we're okay naming the building if they give us 50% of the project cost and we can name interior spaces within the building. We also need to determine what spaces are going to be named. So are we going to allow naming of the children's room, meeting rooms, study rooms? Are we going to go all the way to selling naming rights for individual shelving units? I've seen it done in a variety of ways. There, some cases there's plaques on every single shelf in the building saying that this was donated in honor or in memory of, or just somebody's name on there. So that can be done. Just think about how it may look. But yeah, you can kind of figure out what's going to fit best with your community. You'll want to make sure you have some targets for your campaign. So if we're going to try to raise $1 million, we're going to need 3 folks to give us at least $100,000. We're going to need 5 people to give us somewhere between 25,000 to 100,000. We're also going to have to look at grants in those amounts to see if we can afford that. There are a variety of campaign pages out there. Go look for building fund campaign pages, see what you like best about them. Just be mindful that as campaigns end, those pages may disappear. So if you're going to be a year or 2 out, you may want to just capture those pages, print them off, take screenshots of them, however you feel best that you can organize yourself, um, so that you have those examples for you, and just don't assume that they'll be there moving forward. Um, there may be ways to capture old images of websites, but that may not necessarily be reliable to keep what you want. Um, again, doesn't necessarily matter the size of the campaign. You're just looking for elements of the campaign. Not every campaign is going to be identical. The tools that you use need to fit what your community wants to do. Um, there are a variety of ways to fund this beyond just that capital campaign. Again, your municipality may fund it if the your municipality had been planning for facility improvements for a period of time, especially in communities where there's been rapid growth. They have maybe have created what's called impact fees, which basically assess a charge to developers to fund improvements to spaces. Whether it's a library, could be park systems, could be different um, municipal infrastructure projects that they need support for. If you are um, starting a project and they don't have impact fees, there's no sense going to get impact fees, because those are really assessed over time, and you have to build them up. They're not a quick source of funding. You could use them for the next time you have a project, but those fees do expire over a period of time. So again, there's some timing involved. Um, there are some federal dollars out there. You may look at the community block grants. Each state develops them a little bit differently. Um, there are some public facility dollars that are available to municipalities that would include funds for construction of libraries, but they are also used for other municipal projects. So this may not be your ideal funding source, because they may be used for a different project in a municipality and they can't apply for these every year. So there is some timing that's involved as well. They also are looking at projects now that are shovel ready, in essence about 90% ready to build. So the last 10% is just finalizing the bid documents basically and getting it out to bid. So it's not something you start a project with, it's something you're going to probably end the project funding with in terms of finishing out that last mile, but you have to be ready to go if you were to get that. You can at this point get up to $1 million, but again, you need to be ready to go. USDA has some rural development money, whether it's grants and or loans, so that it's a source of funding. But again, with any project that involves federal dollars, you have to make sure you're following their rules and regulations. It may add some more complexity and timeline to your project, so you'll have to be mindful of that. And either of those, don't assume you're going to get them. There are lots of projects competing for those dollars. Looking out for community foundations, whether your bank or some industries in the area have foundations that they give to community projects for bricks and mortar projects. So some will give money for funding programs or materials, but they won't fund building projects. So you'll have to be careful and look and see what they'll do. Then the other is, going into your community and asking for dollars. You'll have to do that, kind of creating that shared vision, so people will understand why you're doing this project, um, and build those relationships within your community to make this a successful project. Um, when you're looking at your project, you want to make sure that the community is knowing what's going on. Um, Share as many updates as you can, even if they're not the greatest update. Like all of a sudden, this site fell through. That's news you need to share, because it impacts the timeline for your project. Um, You also want to make sure when you're planning this library that you are looking at not only for today, but also into the future. So, you know, let's say you're living in a building that really just is horrible and you're tired of it and it it's totally inadequate. And all of a sudden it comes along, yeah, we're going to build you a new library. And but in essence, you're gaining like 1,000 square feet from what you have now. It's going to be a shiny new building, but it really doesn't meet your long-term needs. You're going to get into that building and you're going to probably be there for 15, 20 years before you get the next building opportunity. So you're really not much better off, or maybe not even any better off, because your new building meets ADA requirements and all the new space got eaten up by the proper aisle width and the proper spacing between tables and chairs. So think about it, and make sure it's a project that's going to work best for you. Throughout the project, make sure you express thanks and gratitude to the folks that are helping you with the project. Plan, maybe some individual or group recognition opportunities, maybe get some support from your friends to maybe throw a, mid-campaign celebration for your workers. So the next few slides will give you some sense of resources that are out there in terms of space planning. Um, you know, Different states have different programs that help support libraries and their building projects. Learn from what you can from the different states, knowing that Wisconsin has its own rules and regulations, but some of the basic premises will be helpful. Um, all of the information that we've talked about, plus much more, is available in the guidebook that you have access to. You can get a free copy of it by going to um, JT Library Planning Facebook page um, and filling out the form, or you can click the link on the slide deck, and you'll be able to download a free copy of the document for you. If you have questions, you can contact me either at the IFLS Library System office, or look at my planning site, or send me an email through my private consulting space planning business. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the process, because again, it's something that most of us don't get to do but once in our career, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, like where do I go? And hopefully this presentation and the guidebook will help you get started in the right direction. I do want to thank you for viewing, and I also want to thank our partners in this project, the Wisconsin Public Library Systems, the Institute of Museums and Library Services for the LSTA grant that supported this project, Department of Public Instruction, as well as the Library Space Building and Spaces website that will be out there, that is a collaboration of CE consultants within Wisconsin. So thank you very much. And again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.